I was part of the Street Fighter 6 closed beta that just closed today, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and just give some brief thoughts about what I thought about it because I am a bit of a Street Fighter fanatic. And I did, do some stuff when King of Fighters was first coming out. So I figure I might as well talk about Street Fighter 6 a little bit since I'm starting to get excited for it. I did want to talk briefly about the gameplay itself because I think that is really the key factor in this versus everything else that I've played, at least in terms of fighting games in the past couple of years. So, whether you realize it or not, fighting games are basically a game of rock, paper, scissors at their very, very, very basic level. You try to punch somebody while they're throwing you, you win. You try to punch somebody and they block, they win. You try to throw somebody when they block, you win. You try to throw somebody when they attack, you lose. And there are other factors that come in, so all of the other things are just stacked up on top of each of those. The distance, how far are you, certain attacks have priority over others, this, that, and the other, so forth, so on. Okay. So, in this one, they've added a few other variables that basically, almost right away, I was like, this is another rock, paper, scissors type of mechanic on top of everything else. So, you have these things, I think they're called overdrive attacks, where your character basically gets super armor and then does a really big move. And depending on what state your opponent was in when you did that move, they either get blown back and reset you to neutral, or they get a crumple state, which will set you up for combos, or they'll get a wall splat state, which will set you up for combos, or they'll just get knocked down. Overdrive attacks are ridiculously powerful because they'll go through regular attacks, and a lot of special attacks, and even some supers. Now, I said the other possibility is that they get blown back and reset to neutral. What happens there is if you try to block, just regular block, the overdrive attack, or if you hold down the either the parry button, or if you're using classic mode, the medium punch and medium kick buttons, you'll get a blowback effect. Basically, poof, knocks both the other character away, and you're basically back to neutral. So your defense is for somebody trying to do an overdrive attack to you, aside from just not being there when they do it, is to either block it or parry it. Now, if you're in the middle of an attack, you really don't have a choice, unless it's a light attack with only a short amount of frames. I have done it where I'm sticking a jab out while they're doing their overdrive, and I was still able to block it afterwards. But you have to be aware that that's what's going on. So, the overdrive attacks seem really powerful until you realize how you counter it. You can just counter it with throw. Almost everybody that was in the beta that we played, their overdrive attack, you can just throw them out of it. Like, walk up, they hit the ground. They can't do anything about it. So throws actually become very, very important because it's a really easy way to counter an overdrive. I usually hate throws in Street Fighter games because it's very hard to counter a throw. Unless you're expecting them to hit throw and then you smack them, or if you get the proper timing to get a throw break, counter throw, tech bonus, what have you. All of those usually are very precise timing. You have to do it just as they're doing it. The window for throw breaks in this game seems to be a lot larger than it is in most other Street Fighter games. Because every time I tried to break a throw, I was usually successful. It was only when I was in a state that I could not get out of that they would be able to throw me without me doing a throw break. So that I think is important, and I hope that they keep it that way. If unless they do other changes to overdrive, because I think that's a really good change, is making that throw break window a lot bigger. The other thing that they changed was you actually have 2 meters to keep track of. One is your parry meter, which I still am kind of figuring out what it does, but the overdrive attack is where that derives from. If you don't have enough meter for your overdrive attack, you just can't do it. You can also hold down the parry button and it'll parry attacks. I should say that this type of parry is different from third strike type parries, which are sort of still in the game. But this type of parry doesn't slow them down. You just prevent the damage and absorb energy by being in that state. Now, if you're just sitting there holding the parry buttons down the entire time, though, you're going to drain your bar. So you don't want to just sit there in parry state the entire time. And then also, if you're in parry state the entire time, you're just going to get thrown, because they're just going to walk up to you and hit throw. You know, because you can't parry that. So the best way to use it really is when you anticipate that they're going to be using a bunch of attacks in sequence, or like, you know, a block string is coming. You use the parry, build some meter off their block string, and there you have it. Now, there is a disadvantage to that. I will say, I was playing Chun-Li, I was up against Jury, and I would parry Jury's block string using just the standard parry. And after I was done parrying everything, she'd dash forward and throw me, and I couldn't throw break it. And I figured out, well, okay, apparently the reason is there's a wind down time once you're done parrying all that stuff. If you're doing just the regular parry, there's a period of time in which you basically can't do anything until the parry animation and everything is all finished. That means you can't throw break, you can't throw any other special attacks. You may be able to get a hit out of it. I didn't really test that, but wound up figuring out, oh, well, you have to block it. If it's a block string, you have to block it. Is what it boils down to. If you can't block it, then you try to parry it. But if you block it, then you would be able to throw break it. You can still throw break if somebody tries to throw you if you're in blocking animation. You might not be able to do a special attack or a regular attack right away, but you can still throw break out of block. You can't throw break out of parry. The other thing was perfect parry, which is the third strike type parry. You hit the parry button whenever anticipate a hit actually coming in, and it slows down for a minute. The first couple of times I landed one, and most of the time I landed it completely by accident. But the first time I landed one, I wasn't able to really do much of anything, because I didn't realize what had happened until it had happened. Yeah. So but the next few times I was able to capitalize on a little bit, stick a throw in there, stick a light in there, interrupt their attack, whatever they were doing. You know. So that's my impression so far, is that the new mechanics just seem to re-emphasize the sort of rock, paper, scissors type basis that a lot of fighting games have to begin with. And so it's really fun to kind of learn how to counteract some of these things. I'm just going to put a quick tier list up here, because I know that's what everybody came for, right? to see how these characters performed, and I will go ahead and tell you this: I didn't see Luke at all, like at all. I played probably 5-6 hours of this game, and I didn't see Luke once. So I don't know if that means Luke is bad. I don't know if that means he's good. I never saw him. I didn't play him. I never saw him. So the characters I played were Ken and Guile, and I feel like Ken is good. I'm really not sure about Guile yet. There were some Kens that were doing some kind of crazy stuff on me when I was playing, and when I played Ken, it felt really good. When I played Guile, it felt less good, but it felt familiar. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not in this game, though. The problem was I was bringing my recollection of what you can do with those characters to this game, and you really can't do that. You can't expect to do that and learn all the new mechanics at the same time. So I had to break off into somebody I didn't know very well, which was Chun-Li, who I spent most of the time with. And I'm pretty sure Chun-Li's in the really good category, just because this seems to be the best version of her that she's ever been. It seems like she has every good attack she ever had in the game. In the previous games, she has the command lightning legs like she does in Street Fighter V, so that's a little annoying. But she has air lightning legs. I don't know what you would use that for. She has Kikoken, she has Kiko Sho, she has the super that everybody loves to parry. But I mean, everything that she has seems to be really good. Her lights are really quick. So if you need to stick a light in there to just break up what they're doing, you can't combo off those lights except into other lights very well, as far as I've seen. But you can combo lights into super, or lights into special, or lights into lightning legs, stuff like that. So the lightning legs isn't quite as good as it has been in other games. Only the fierce version, I think, gives you a knockdown. The other two versions, they just stay there, so they just kind of stand there and get hit. Hazinshu is really helpful for having overhead without having to jump. So, stuff like that. So I think she's really good. I don't know if that means that she's the best in the game, but she has enough tools that I think she's probably going to be challenging to face regardless of who you're facing. The two characters I saw the other three are characters I saw most of, which were Kimberly, Juri, and Ryu. And Juri, I think, is probably up here too, and not necessarily because she's versatile, but because she's kind of high damage. It seemed like every time I get hit with Juri, I'd be reeling a lot harder than I was with Chun-Li. So, I think Juri is kind of ridiculous in this game. Not necessarily like absolute god tier or anything, but she's definitely on par with Chun-Li in terms of just being able to overpower her a lot. She moves ridiculously fast. She has decent priority on most of her attacks. She recovers from a lot of her attacks very quickly, so she can set up for something else. It's just kind of bonkers. The only thing I think that might be somewhat disappointing is her feng shui engine. I've seen people try to use feng shui engine against me, and I've never seen it really work out for them. So it seems like better to just save her super meter for her level 3. Kimberly, I think Kimberly's up here too. So we might actually do this. Because I don't think anybody's more overpowered than anybody else, really. So Kimberly was really rough because she has a lot of mix-up potential. She can basically get around your neutral. If she can basically pop from one side of the screen to the other and hit you with an overhead, or hit you low, or hit you mid, and you just have to kind of guess which way and in which direction she's coming from, and you just got to deal with it. That being said, I don't think there's anything in particularly difficult about fighting her, in the sense that I don't think she's like completely out of Chun-Li's league. Once I was able to figure out what Kimberly was trying to do, I was usually able to counter it. So it's just that Kimberly can do so many things in so many different ways that I just, was having to guess most of the time, and after a while you figure out which way they want to go each time. So, but Kimberly was very hard to wrap my brain around very early in. So Kimberly's probably the reason I wound up switching to Chun-Li out of Ken and Guile, just because having a character where I have muscle memory from a different game was actually affecting how I was reacting to Kimberly, so I decided I had to switch. So the other one is Ryu, who I think is just like Ken, is just average. It wasn't that I didn't lose to Ryu, it was like with Ryu and Ken, it wasn't so much that I didn't lose to them so much as I think they didn't have tools that made them seem unfair, I guess is what I'm getting at. Ken had a lot of really flashy, cool looking stuff, and some of it was pretty good and caught me off guard, but Juri and Kimberly caught me off guard a lot more often than Ken or Ryu did. So like Ken or Ryu would still win against me, but it's not like I felt like, oh, this character is such a pain, or So I think they're probably about average. If any of them is bad from the ones that I experienced, is maybe Guile, just because his game plan has not changed since Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Or probably even before that. I don't think his gameplay has changed since World Warrior. His game plan hasn't changed since then. So it's not necessarily as a bad game plan, I guess. It's just with this particular game and how it works, and people trying out all the new stuff, Guile seems kind of lackluster. That might change as things sort of get sorted out once the game actually gets to a release point and we have more other characters coming in here, because we don't actually have any grapplers really. I mean, Kimberly's the closest thing you have to a grappler, and she doesn't grapple all the time, so she's more of a mix-up character. So I mean, we don't have all the archetypes available, so once we have some of the other archetypes filling out the game, it might make a bit of a difference. So and again, I didn't play Luke, and I didn't see anybody else play Luke, so I can't make any judgments about Luke. So anyway, that's my little tidbit on Street Fighter 6. I will be back later. See you guys on the flip side.